Hey everyone, I'm Paige Tyler, and if you don't already know me, I write romantic suspense and paranormal romantic suspense along with my hubby. We've got werewolves in the SWAT Special Wolf Alpha Team and STAT Special Threat Assessment Team series, shifters in the XOP series, and Navy SEALs in the SEALs of Coronado series. If you're new to my channel, welcome, and if you're a regular, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about how I became a published author. But first we have to go all the way back to when I was a kid in elementary school, because that's when I first started writing. And the very first story I remember writing was one about anthropomorphic cats that was inspired by our pet cats on my parents' farm. Our cats already had cool names, so in the story I gave them cool clothes and cool jobs and cool things to do to go along with those names. I had so much fun writing that story that I wrote more and then more and then more. Now, I don't remember what all those other stories were about, but I do remember that writing was one of my favorite things to do, and it still is. I never thought of writing as anything more than a hobby, though, until high school, when my creative writing teacher, who was amazing by the way, told me that I have real talent for telling stories and I should think about making writing a career. I was all about that, but I wasn't sure how to go about doing it, especially since this was before the internet, so I couldn't just Google anything or watch a tutorial on YouTube. That didn't stop me from trying, though, and the first thing I did was buy a book called Publishers Marketplace. It was filled with a list of agents and publishers and how to query them. I knew right away then that I was not at that point yet. I hadn't even finished any of the dozens of stories I was writing. Come to think of that, I did a lot of it back then. When I met my hubby a little while later, I realized he loves writing as much as I do, so we started writing together. We tried all sorts of different genres. Historical romance that had a mermaid in it because I'm in love with Disney's Little Mermaid. A romantic suspense that had a fun pair of secondary characters that ended up getting their own story because they were way more interesting than the main characters. Oh, and we can't forget epic fantasy, because after seeing Lord of the Rings for the first time, we decided to write one of those too. Looking back on it now, it's embarrassing to say, but it was epically bad. But that's okay, because that's how we learn to hone our skill as writers. As you probably already figured out, none of those books were ready for prime time. In fact, it wasn't until years later, when I came across a website that sold ebooks, I finally thought, hey, we can write stories like that. So we did. We sold our first story to that publisher in 2004. In fact, we sold about 20 of them in all genres: contemporary, western, sci-fi, romantic suspense. Oddly enough, though, no paranormal, and that was weird because I really love werewolves. They're like my favorite. After that, we worked our way up to bigger small presses and started publishing indie books as well, mostly all standalone stuff though. But what I really wanted for us was to sign with a New York publisher. Then the dilemma was coming up with something to pitch to an agent. I'd done a lot of that at various conferences without much success, and it was getting kind of frustrating. Well, we ended up having a conversation with our really good friend, author Monette Michaels. She writes awesome books, by the way, and you should check her out. And a New York published writer friend of hers who gave us some great advice. And that advice was to take my love of shifters with hubby's knowledge of the military. He's retired Army, by the way, and combine it into a unique voice that's unlike anyone else's. And that's what we did. I know, that makes it sound easy, and it really wasn't. Okay, well, actually coming up with an idea for a story to pitch, which turned out to be Your Perfect Mate, the first book in the XOP series, was easy. Finding an agent to represent us, not so much. See, it isn't just about writing a great book. It's about where to sell that book and what box to put it in. And by box, I mean what shelf to put it on in the bookstore, virtual or otherwise. With Her Perfect Mate, that got tricky because it's a mashup of romance, action, thriller, and paranormal, and it has a feline shifter heroine who seriously kicked butt. While tons of romance agents loved it, they weren't sure how to sell it to a publisher. We created so many agents, I was ready to give up, and that's when hubby suggested querying thriller agents instead. I wasn't sure how well that would work either, but I figured, why not? The most they could say was no thanks, and I'd already heard a lot of that. But then one of those agents did say yes, and they wanted to represent us. Even more exciting, they sold the XOP series to Sourcebooks, who loved our writing so much that they immediately wanted another series. That's when we came up with the SWAT Special Wolf Alpha Team series, and a little while later, a spin-off from that, the STAT Special Threat Assessment Team series. In between writing those for Sourcebooks, we wanted to create a series that we indie publish as well, which is our Seals of Coronado series. I'll be posting videos with some behind-the-scenes stuff on our books, including how we come up with our ideas for the series I just told you about, what's going on with our works in progress, and lots of other stuff. So if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click on that subscribe button. Also, the links to my website as well as social media are below in the description. If you have any questions or comments, post them below. Oh, and there's a link to a free book there too. It's called Seal of Her Dreams, and it's from our Seals of Coronado series. I know you'll love it, so grab your copy. Happy reading, and I will see you next time.